In this video, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that you have left in my videos. I'm going to try to give you answers to your questions and also show you some examples where I can. All of that and more, so without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So I'm going to go through some of the questions that I recently got from you guys. Now, these questions are very valid, and I know that sometimes finding answers to these small questions can be a little bit difficult, especially if you are sifting through some old Power BI content or you don't quite know where to look at. So I'm going to try to answer them where I can, and if you like this format type of videos, I'll try to do more of them in the future. So the first one is from Nathcas. So it says, thank you. Good brief presentation, but this search option that allows searching a specific name in the slicer isn't always available in Power BI. I would love to know why, if possible. So what he's talking about, he or she is talking about, is the ability to be able to use a search. So what I mean is, if you use a slicer here, you have this ability to change or add the search option. So under the format visual, you will sometimes have this option to search, sometimes not. Now, I find that that's a bit temperamental. Sometimes it won't show up here. Usually it will show up like around here, but sometimes it won't. But if you can't find it there, the usual place you will find this is under this ellipsis icon. You will see this search, which will show up the search bar, which allows you to search values in your slicer. Now, it doesn't matter if you're using a lists or a drop-down, that should still be available. So it's not the slicer type that affects this. However, what does affect this is the type of data that you have in your field well. So at the moment, we have a text type field in the field well, which allows us to search those texts. However, if that changes into something like a number type, for example, let's put in sales number there, which, as you can see, it shows us sales. Now you can't see the search option anymore, even if you go under the ellipsis icon. So if you're using a non-text type value in your field well for your slicers, the search option will not be available. The next question that I want to answer is from Zabdiel Alonso, and he says, is it possible to do a schedule refresh if my information is coming every day from a changing name text file? For example, yesterday's file was called certain date, today's file is called this date, and so on. So the short answer to this is yes, you can, but it's obviously a little bit tricky, because when you use files as a source, it uses the file name as the as part of your query, and if that file name changes, your queries won't be able to find that file. However, if you use folders to your advantage, you should be able to do so. So as an example, here I've created two files with two different names. They're in the same folder. You have 1/1/2022, which has the just an order list here, 1 to 5, and in the second file here we have the same format type, so we have 1 column orders, but instead 6 to 10. Now we want to use the folders, as I mentioned, to our advantage. So in this case, if you just use, let's put this in one folder for now, in a folder called this folder. Now in this report, I'm just going to use get data. Instead of getting data from an Excel workbook, get it from a folder. So it's not here, but if we go to more, we can go to folder here. And if you hit connect, it will allow you to choose which folder you want to use. So in this case, this folder. So that will bring up any file that is in that folder. So if you hit transform data, your reference is now, if you look at your source, your reference is in the folder itself. not the actual file name. So if you hit combine files, which is this 2 arrow pointing down, it will try to combine files in your folder, which in this case is just only one file. You just have to make sure that there's only one file in that folder, which is the file that you want to be using, and that should pretty much do it. So the reason why normally in a normal sense you would fail is you would have a reference here to the actual file name, which in this case, if you scroll through this, you won't. So the only thing that will change is obviously the values here in source name. So what will happen if I hit close and apply here? And we bring in the column name. So you have your orders here, 1 to 5. If we change that file, let's change it to a more later file. If you hit refresh, well, let's not refresh everything. Let's just refresh this query that we've just created. So refresh data. You'll see that it doesn't fail. You'll see that your data still loads from that new file. So basically the trick here is to make sure that none of your queries are referring to the title of the file itself. Instead, you should use the combine files using the folder and use the folder as your absolute reference, and that should work for you. The next question is from Pete Cardona. He says, hi, can you help me here? I tried the calendar auto, but it doesn't pick up my data as dates. It starts from 1899 and so on. So the reason why this might happen is because calendar auto obviously looks at any calendars or any date fields that you have available in your model. And if it doesn't find anything, it will try to create its own range. Now, the main culprit for this kind of error is most likely due to the fact that you have your dates in a non-date format. So either maybe they are in a text format or something else which doesn't allow calendar auto to pick up. So if you want to check just your dates are in a date format, and the way that you can check that is if I can show you under order. So here we have an order date column. Now this column you will see is a data type date time. So either date time or date should allow you to generate your calendar table using the calendar auto. And if you're using calendar auto to create a calendar table, I highly suggest that you check my latest video around creating a calendar table using DAX, because actually creating a date range that you have set up yourself. So for example, here I created a calendar table with a manual date range, is actually less prone to errors because it doesn't depend on the data model or your data sets having dates and so on. The dates table or the calendar table will be created regardless of what data you have in your model. The next question that I have is from Schizofred. So it says, nice video, thanks. Does someone know if there's a way to convert dates format to date month year instead of the default ISO formats in the CSV file? So for example, the dates format instead of the date and time format. So this problem is very common, and actually not everyone knows how to fix the date time into a date, because it's a little bit weird how it's built. So for example, you will notice here, if I go to orders, and if I change the order date from a date time to a date, it works, right? But let's say if I create this data that you have put here, date 11/29 T 19/13/17.5844778. So not quite everyone knows how to format this, so I'm going to show you how to do it. So if you try to change it into a date time, it does fix that. So as you can see that obviously you have the date and the time, but we're not quite there yet. What you'll notice if you change it to directly into a date, it errors out. So what you'll need to do is first you need to convert it into a date time so that the column or your data gets recognized as a date time column. The next thing that you need to do is to change it into a date. Now, here you will have the option, Power BI will give you an option to change the column type either on the current step or add it as a new step. Instead of replacing the current step, you want to add it as a new step. So what it will do is it will convert that date time format from CSV into a date like this without the timestamps. The next question is from Uncle Caesar. He says, is there a way to change the background color in tables for alternative rows? Now, I am assuming what you mean here is this alternative row colors, which you can absolutely. So under style presets, you should be able to change the presets here. If you wanted to change the alternating colors here, I believe it should be around here. So here we go. So alternative background color. So instead of gray, we want to use maybe blue. So that will change it. Now in the future, if you're having problems trying to look for certain formatting options available to you, there is a search option here. So if you type simply color, for example, it will show you all the available options for you in terms of changing color. Now you just need to bear in mind that obviously this is the American way of writing color, so you just need to omit the U. Otherwise, it will give you the options that you need. The next question is from Mohammed Chaudhry. He asks, how do you apply the same background to all the pages? So what he means is to import or upload the background from your canvas. So under format your background, canvas background, if I import a value here, like let's say this one, so this will create a background for our report. And I guess what you're asking is, if you already have the pages created, how do you apply your canvas backgrounds to them? And the short answer is, I'm not sure you can for each of those ones. So you either would need to duplicate those pages so that you would already have the backgrounds pre-created there, or re-import that image that you want to use for your canvas. So I'm sorry if you didn't find a shortcut way to do it. The next question is from Selva Kumar. He says, hi bro, I've used this HTML viewer, and this is in relation to the HTML viewer video that I covered recently, but there's an issue while I export into PowerPoint and PDF. The HTML viewer is not working when I export to PowerPoint and PDF. Please advise. So basically the HTML viewer, because it's a third-party visual and it's not a custom visual that comes with Power BI, it means that it's not fully certified by Power BI. So at the moment, the only way that you could do it is by obviously just taking a screenshot of your page and then putting it into a PowerPoint, which would accomplish the same thing. However, what you can do instead is to try and use visuals that are Power BI certified. So what do I mean by that? So obviously we don't have a HTML viewer default visual available to us. However, what we can do is go to get more visuals. When you're viewing visuals that you can use, you will see some options here, and you will have this little star icon next to the names. It says Power BI certified. So this is a good indicator that the visual has been certified and passed the tests that the Power BI team has made for this visual to be used with other aspects of Power BI. So in this case, the HTML viewer doesn't have this tick, but you have some other options that you can use. So for example, this one, text styler, or the shielded HTML viewer, which will give you the same view or the same functionality. So I would suggest using one of these and then trying it again. So the next question is from Ali. He says, great video. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. My question is whether it is possible to set an automatic refresh time for all datasets in my workspaces at one go, instead of scheduling it one by one for each report I have in my workspace. So the short answer to this is yes, but it won't be through Power BI. It will be through Power Automate. So in a previous video, I covered how you can refresh your datasets using Power Automate, which is pretty easy to set up. You simply create your flows. you create a button that you can click, and it will automatically refresh the dataset that you say for it to refresh. Now, what you can do is, instead of creating a button in your Power Automate, you can instead create a scheduled flow, which means that you can set a time in which the flow gets triggered. And within your flow themselves, you're not restricted to adding just one dataset. You can add multiple flows that refreshes different datasets in your workspace. So if you have 5 different datasets that you want to refresh all at the same time, you can simply create different branches in your flow so that all of them gets refreshed at a specific schedule. So here we go. So if I try to create a new flow here, for example, and let's say I want to create a scheduled cloud flow. Let's say I want to set this up to refresh automatically every day at 9 a.m. Repeat every day, refresh datasets, hit create. And then from here, you can use datasets, refresh a dataset. You choose, this is already linked to my workspace, so I just choose whichever dataset I want to refresh, for example. So if this is the first dataset, I simply just create another one here. So refresh another dataset. So I can choose something else in my workspace, choose a different report, and this schedule. So you have one schedule controlling all the refreshes of your reports, but obviously you have to set it up in Power Automate and not in Power BI. So the last question that I want to cover is from Magdalene. He says, okay, understand what does the folding mean, but I didn't get the benefit of it actually. Does it make the query faster? Is that the point? And if these steps could be done through the source, why wouldn't I include these steps in SQL itself? Another point, does it work for all SQL source queries? I got a SQL query and the source step doesn't seem to have native query. What does this mean? So to answer your questions one by one, and as far as I know. So the first question about making queries faster. So the answer is it depends. So imagine that you have a SQL database with a lot of table data. We have lots of columns and lots of rows. With no query folding, when you first load that data, that table into your Power BI report, you're loading all of that data into Power BI for you to process, which obviously takes a lot of time for the query to return that value because there's a lot of data in your initial query. However, if you have query folding, you're essentially creating steps that potentially reduces the query results that you are sending to your source system, making the query basically faster based on the filters that the query folding creates for you. And if these steps could be done through the source, why wouldn't I include the steps in SQL itself? And I don't disagree with that entirely. So there are a couple of different scenarios in which you can do that already in SQL. So for example, you can create views that specifically use or reduce the data that your Power BI connects to so that you are only querying the data that you need. So Power BI, the query folding simply just creates a different way for you to consume that data without having to create or do it in the source itself. However, that doesn't stop you from creating those steps in SQL yourself. With regards to the last question, as far as I know, or at least from my experience, query folding always worked for SQL sources. Now, it's a different case if you had a step that is not foldable before the steps that you create with SQL, in which case it won't fold. However, from my experience, it's always worked. Now, if it doesn't work for your SQL source, it might be worth adding some details on your question, and perhaps maybe it's a bug that the Power BI team can have a look at. And that's really it for all the questions that I could cover for today. Now, this format is a little bit different from what I usually do. So if you like this kind of video, let me know in the comment section box below and I'll try to create more of these. Thanks for watching. As usual, give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so I have to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you really like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.